Well, hello everybody. My name is Donald Griffin of Legacy Law, and it's a huge pleasure for me to record an interview today with James Hughes. I'm going to just read out a little bio. It could take a long time, but we have distilled this into the essentials. Jay Hughes is a pioneer in the field of advising business owning families and families of wealth. During a very successful career as an attorney advising private client families around the world, he developed a practice focused on helping them avoid the shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves proverb, known by most cultures. Jay is an internationally sought after speaker, helping advisors and families understand and manage the dynamic growth of families' human, intellectual, social, spiritual, and financial capitals towards their families' flourishing. Jay is a published author with many forewords in industry-related books and has been quoted in the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal. He is a member of many boards of private trust companies and philanthropic organizations, an advisor to many investment institutions, and a member and fellow of the leading trust and estate and family dynamics professional organizations. To me, Jay seems to be a lifelong learner and broad reader and a teacher who can distill very effectively the material that he has read, learned, and written himself. And most importantly to me, I consider Jay to be a friend and a mentor, and we've been having at least 1 hour chats regularly since 2019. We met in person 12 months ago when Jay kindly wrote the foreword for a book of mine. And I just thought the conversations are fascinating to me. And I asked Jay if at some point we might record one of them so other people could listen in. So here we are. So thank you very much, Jay, for taking the time to have a chat today.
Well, Donald, this is a long waited for opportunity for people to peek in, as you said, listen in to a conversation between two great friends and colleagues and fellow journeyers on the question of helping families flourish and societies flourish. Great fun to be with you today. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, Jay. One of the first things that I noticed from reading some of your books, and by the way, I mean, this is the most famous one, which quite a few people in Australia have, but there are others which I would like to quote from and allude to today in our free-flowing conversation. One of the great distinctions you pointed out to me as a lawyer wanting to work closer with families was the distinction between quantitative advice and work and qualitative advice and work. And while I knew those words, I didn't use them very often in sentences. And the most common usage I would come across would be in the financial sector, watching movies like Billions or TV shows like Billions, where they would talk about the quants. And they were the clever people who came up with algos, which I think are algorithms. And they were taking humans out of things and coming up with systems to make money. And I thought, you hear about quants, but you never hear about quals. And I feel, and I've learned that, we really are on the qualitative side of things. And it seems to talk to the human condition. And I wonder, I know there's a great quote from our friend Matt Wesley where he says, culture trumps structure. I wonder if qualitative trumps quantitative, and if it's really the driver of a lot of what we see in the world.
Well, Donald, let's check this out a bit. The first thing for the scientists and the quants that are listening, you may recall, my dear quants, that it takes 3 quantities in chemistry to equal 1 quality. Bear that in mind. Second, you might be surprised that if you went to the dictionary and you looked up the word wealth, you wouldn't find the first definition as money, you'd find the first definition as well-being. Oh, really? Uh-huh. Yeah. The word wealth is an Anglo-Saxon word, two words, wealth, commonwealth, commonweal. We still have it in its original form. It's a qualitative word. Now, again, for those of you who had some education, and I'm sure it's all of you listening, you may remember that the Greeks, oh dear, here goes Jay taking us back to 4,000 years ago. The Greeks made a very clear distinction between moral philosophy, qualitative, and natural philosophy, or techne, quantitative. And they made it very clear that moral philosophy trumps natural philosophy. This has never changed. So whether you take a 4,000-year-old view, and I'm sure, by the way, the societies and cultures that preceded the Greeks had the same idea. So you have multiple ways, Donald, of coming to the same reality. Qualitative trumps quantitative.
Thank you. And I think you also explain it when you're with families, in not saying, what do you want or what do you need, but more open questions about how can I help?
Yes, this was a great awakening for me after a very serious and therefore very good midlife crisis, finding myself in Dante's dark wood with no way out at 49, right on time. One of the ways I found myself in that dark wood with no way out was that I had become very, very skilled, perish the thought, an expert in the field I was in, and had lots of kudos all over the world, as you said kindly in my introduction. But I knew I wasn't helping. I also knew that all that I knew in the models and profession and New York City, where I was based, and the big entrepot cities around the world, where the lawyers and bankers and brokers and family advisors and families were resident, were all on a path toward seeking to be greater and greater experts, narrower and narrower a sense in their focus, and all focused on the quantitative issues, as you said. And I could see clearly I wasn't helping. So I sat there in that dark wood and thought through, do I want to stay in this profession or not? And the more I thought about it, the more I thought that the families that I was serving, I really loved. And I wanted them to be successful, to flourish. I wanted the individual members of those families to flourish. So gradually, I began to realize that I'd been asking the wrong question. I'd been asking the experts question, what do you need? When I ask you that, you don't realize it, but I've made you needy. And so you try to figure out, well, what do I need? Even though you don't need anything. Now, and on the other hand, we sit down together and I say, look, I have no idea if I can help you, and you don't know if I can help you, but I will ask you, how do you think I might be able to help? I'm not making you needy. I'm not making you helpless. I'm actually asking you a fair question. Is there some way that maybe that my background and yours would enable me to help? Donald, from that moment that I saw that so clearly, life changed. And I moved from being an expert to a whole different frame of mind. I moved to be a beginner's mind. I recognized that I didn't know anything. Certainly nothing was useful. And so I thought, well, why not explore this beginner's mind position, which comes from the Buddha, and see where it might lead. One of the places it's led, and then I'll finish up this long answer, is I started to read. I was in that very dark place. I thought I needed a present. I wasn't worthy of a present for the reasons I found myself there, but I thought I might start to read. I loved reading as a young person, so I started to read. And Donald, not surprisingly, like Forrest Gump, after his beloved died, he started to run, remember?
Yes.
And he thought he'd just run down to the end of the path, to the fence. And then he thought, well, maybe he'd run down the little path beyond the fence to the road. And then he thought he'd run a little further. And 3.5 years later, he's still running. Well, from 1991 until today, I'm still reading. Forrest Gump reading.
And I remember, Jay, an early conversation where you laughed and you acknowledged that I was just starting to run in my particular part of this journey, and you jokingly said, good luck getting off this road.
That is exactly what I said, because I thought this poor man has no idea how tired and exhausted and lonely he's going to be when he passes away from the place where he is, where he's helping needs, to this wonderful new idea that he has of, can he help? Of course, the answer was yes, but I had to give you fair warning. A friend doesn't just let another friend get out there and run. Friends got to give fair warning. You really understand?